All right, let's finish up chapter 13. This is going to be the end of our material. All right, so we talked about defined contribution plans. Our most common example of that's going to be a traditional 401k plan, right? You get to contribute pre-tax dollars, right? That money is excluded from gross income. It grows tax-free. Then distributions are taxed as ordinary income. A note on 401k matching. If you had to guess, what was the top performing hedge fund of 2019? Depends on where you look, right? Hedge funds aren't public. One source I found said Carousel Advisors was the best with a return of about 32.85%, right? Excellent if you got to invest there. If you contribute $5,000 to a 401k and your employer matches 1-for-1, what return did you get? You earned a 100% return plus $5,000 times your marginal tax rate, right? So more than 100%. So the point here is if you get a job and your company matches 1-for-1 or more, then at least contribute as much as you can to get it right. There's a maximum for how much they'll match. Contribute up to that maximum, right? Because it's a fantastic return on investment. Okay, so if you remember one thing from this class, take the match. Oh yeah. All right, so a traditional 401k plan is like that. You've probably also heard of a Roth plan. So a Roth 401, the difference with a Roth is instead of getting the tax deduction now and paying tax later, I pay tax now and then I'll never pay tax later. All right, so I contribute after tax dollars. I don't get to exclude it from income now. I pay ordinary income tax at today's rates, and then I contribute money. But then I'm done. I'm done paying tax, and I won't pay tax when I retire. Same contribution limits, right? And it's a combined limit for both, right? If I contribute up to the limit for a traditional plan, I can't contribute to a Roth plan, right? If it's a 401k, right, my company has to offer it and administer it. If they match, their match has to go to a traditional plan and only your contribution goes in the Roth part. This is Senator Roth, who, right, these plans are named after him. You probably haven't heard of him. He is from, can you guess that state? Please don't say Idaho. Vaguely similar shape, but not Idaho. Sort of looks like Vermont or New Hampshire. This is Delaware. Hi, I'm in Delaware. All right, so with a Roth 401k plan, right, the benefit of a Roth is that a qualified distribution is tax-free. To be qualified, the account has to be open for 5 years. The employee has to be at least 59 and a half. Whether or not they're retired doesn't matter, right? And then no tax paid on the distributions. If it's not qualified, right, it hasn't been open 5 years or you're not 59 and a half, then just like other plans, there's a 10% penalty for early distributions. You're going to pay tax on some of the distribution. Since part of the contribution you already paid tax on, you can get that money back without paying more income tax, although you still have the penalty. All right, but some of the money is not your contribution, it's money that's grown, right? And the money grows tax-free in a Roth account, which is nice. And all the growth is never going to get taxed if you wait. But if you withdraw it early, they're going to calculate your contributions that are after tax and the rest, and they're going to do a percentage. And so whatever is the percentage that's your contribution, you can get without paying income tax. The rest, you're going to have the penalty plus the tax and the penalty on everything. Also have something called individually managed qualified retirement plans. These are called IRAs. IRA also stands for Irish Republican Army. Interesting bit of history. So these are for people, right, who maybe don't have a plan through their work, and they can just contribute on their own to save for retirement. So you can do a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, and each spouse can have an IRA. So these have limits, right, on how much you contribute. It's less than an employer plan. You can contribute $6,000 or $1,000 more, $7,000 if you're 50 or more at the end of the year. You can't contribute more than your earned income. If you're married, each spouse can contribute up to the limit. The lesser earning spouse, their limit is going to be the higher earning spouse's earned income minus what that spouse contributed. Starting 2020, you can deduct contributions as long as you work and have earned income. Before 2020, once you were 70 and a half, you could no longer contribute to an IRA. All right, so since these are mostly for people who don't have an employer plan, you can't deduct an IRA contribution if you participate in an employer plan. If your income is low enough, though, you still can. So if you're unmarried and your AGI is less than $64,000, you can also deduct IRA contributions. They phase out, though, pro rata over a $10,000 range. By the time you make $74,000, you can no longer deduct IRA contributions. For married couples, it's a bigger, right, a higher threshold and a $20,000 phase out range. It's a little different if one taxpayer doesn't participate in an employer plan, but their spouse does, right? Then they phase out a little bit higher. All right, but even if you're phased out because of your income and you're in an employer-sponsored plan, you can still contribute to an IRA. You just can't deduct it. So that there's still an advantage in that, because even though it's after-tax contribution, the money still grows tax-free. You have until April 15th, right, to the tax filing deadline, to make a contribution to your IRA. So for 2019, I can make a contribution until April 15th of 2020 or July 15th of this year. You may hear my son screaming in the background. So an IRA, it's just like a 401k, right? You get the deduction now, right? So a 401k, you get to exclude from gross income. An IRA, you deduct as a 4AGI deduction. So it has the same effect. Just like other plans, it's a 10% penalty if you get a distribution before age 59 and a half. Doesn't matter whether or not you're retired. IRAs have exceptions in the tax code. If you have medical expenses and health insurance premiums, or if you're buying your first home, you can often take out money and not pay the penalty. The IRAs have the same minimum distribution requirements as employer-sponsored plans. So that's 72 years old, starting in 2020, you have to start taking distributions. Non-taxable percentage. So if you take out a distribution too early, any contributions that you put in that you already paid tax on, you can take those out and they won't be taxed again. So I should mention, as part of the stimulus response to the virus, Congress waived minimum distribution requirements for this year, right? So if you're retired, the stock market's way down, it's a bad time to take money out. And so you're not required to do that. You won't face the penalty. A Roth IRA is the Roth version of an individual account, right? So you pay tax now. It's not deductible this year, but then you're done. It grows tax-free, and you can take distributions tax-free, right? As long as it's been open 5 years and you're 59 and a half. It has the same limits, right? And this is a combined limit for traditional IRA and Roth IRA. You can contribute $6,000 a year $7,000 if you're 50 or older. All right, catch-up contribution. But also you can only contribute up to your earned income. The thing about Roth IRAs is they phase out based on your income. It doesn't matter if you have an employer-sponsored plan or not. Right, so these are originally just supposed to be for lower earning people. So you can see the phase out ranges here, 122 to 137, 193 to 203 for married, and right, these are pro rata that phase out evenly over that range. Right, but there's a loophole in the law that Congress knows about and they've just deliberately left in. What you can do is you can make a non-deductible, right, after-tax contribution to a traditional IRA, and then later you just roll it over to a Roth, right? So that essentially allows you to contribute to a Roth because you've already paid tax. Now it's in a Roth, it's going to grow tax-free, and you won't pay tax on distributions. All right, so just like a Roth 401k, distributions from a Roth IRA are not taxed, right? You pay tax now, and then you're done. So to be qualified, you have to be at least 59 and a half. The account has to be open 5 years. If the taxpayer died, distributions to their heirs, or you can become disabled and get distributions. You can also take up to $10,000 for a down payment on your first home. All right, if you take out a distribution too early, you can get your money back, right, that you've already paid tax on, and that money won't be taxed. No minimum distribution requirements on a Roth plan. Why do you think that is? That's because since you've already paid tax, Congress doesn't care whether you take it out or not. Suppose Andre is a dentist. His current marginal tax rate is 37%. Would he prefer a Roth or a traditional IRA? He probably prefers a traditional IRA. His tax rate is high now, so he'd rather get the deduction now, right? And he'll pay tax later. Gary draws a small salary from the tech firm he helped to start. It operates at a loss. Does Gary want a traditional or a Roth IRA? All right, Gary's tax rates are low now, and he's optimistic they'll be high in the future. So he might prefer a Roth IRA. He'll pay tax now at his low rates and not pay tax in the future when he has high rates. All right, so that's the prediction that you're trying to make. You're trying to compare tax rates now, your own marginal tax rate compared to what you predict they'll be in the future. Right, it's uncertain, but it's a guess that you have to make when you're making that decision. Ideally, you'll have both, right? You'll be diversified and you'll have traditional and Roth plans. All right, self-employed people, all right, they have a couple other options for funding their retirement and getting tax benefits for it. An SEP IRA, or simplified employee pension, or an individual 401k. Both are really the same logic. You can deduct your contributions from your income this year. They'll grow tax-free and they'll be taxed when you get distributions in retirement. An SEP IRA, right, its limits, right, it's going to be the same as the combined limit for a defined contribution plan from an employer, right, $56,000, but it also can't be more than 20% of net Schedule C income minus the deduction for employer's portion of self-employment tax, right? So the lesser of these is going to be your annual limit. If you have employees and you're self-employed, you have to offer the same plan to your employees if you want it for yourself. The individual 401k is only available for sole proprietors and their spouse, if they have one, who don't have employees. So it's very similar, right? It still can't be more than 56,000, but on this side, it's a little bit higher. You have the 20% times net Schedule C income minus employer portion of self-employment taxes. but you can add another 19,000, right? That's equal to the employer limit on an employer provided plan, sorry, the employee limit. And you can do catch-up contributions. If you're at least 50 by the end of the year, you can do another 56,000. All right, so the most you could do would be 62,000. On top of these limits, you can also never contribute more than 100% of net Schedule C income minus the deduction for employer portion of self-employment tax. Suppose Dana is 64. She works as a consultant and got $50,000 of income. Due to her specific arrangement, she's paid as a self-employed sole proprietor contractor. So she sets up an individual 401k account and has this $50,000 of self-employment income, right? She's got no expenses that are deductible. No other sources of income. So what is her maximum contribution? All right, she's close to retirement. She just wants to take all this money, put as much of it as possible in a retirement account. All right, so the max for anyone for an individual 401k is $56,000. Also can't be more than net Schedule C income for her when she subtracts what we estimate to be her, right, remember, self-employment tax. Half of that is the employer portion. That comes to $46,468 right after we take out the self-employment tax deduction. Then 20% of that is $9,294. That's the maximum employer contribution, plus she can contribute $19,000 as the employee contribution. So we add those two together, that gives her $28,294, and that's less than the overall max, so she has to use the lesser. Except, right, if we remember, Dana is more than 50 or older at the end of the year, so she can also do another catch-up contribution of $6,000. So in total, she'll be able to deduct a contribution of $34,294. All right, that concludes all of our material for the semester.